Dio is interesting. Yes, he is. Now some of you guys are probably just gonna say, nah, this guy's as much of a generic villain as Frieza is, which will definitely give me brain damage because of the amount of times people have said this. Unironically, is shocking. Makes me think they rushed through the series to maybe, well, just get to Steel Ball Run and become one with the herd of sheep that bring up that part in every single JoJo discussion. Holy man. Anyways, this guy right here is not just your average villain. He's riddled with many subtle things that are shown to us that gives us a pretty good understanding on both his true nature and actual motives for the story. And these two things add well to his characterization, making him a pretty interesting guy. And I can't even lie, this guy do be having some great evolution throughout the series that keeps on adding and adding onto his character. I'm going to talk about all of Dio, excluding Diego, just Dio himself from the original universe, and looking into who exactly he is to the story and characters. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the video and also see the light of Dio's character. Now first off, to get an understanding of Dio's character, we'll need to look into how he started off in the world he so desperately wants to control later on. Born Dio Brando to Dario Brando and his unnamed mother, Dio was brought up in the slums of London. It was probably really hard for him to have a good influence because of where he was at, so of course the street behavior had latched onto him as he grew up. But while growing up, I don't think he was an entirely evil person. He surely did love his mother because the hate that he has for his father that we see around the start of the series had stemmed from what Dario had done to Dio's mom. His relationship with her was probably a close one, and with what had happened to her and the violent area Dio was in, Dio became an unstoppable force. He became a force that would use his street smarts and rage he had gained from his upbringing as a way to try and stand on top, to have the things that he couldn't have in the slums. The Joestars inviting him was seemingly a shortcut for his path to greatness, but it made him even more angrier, having to live with people that stand above him and couldn't know the experiences that he has had whilst living in the slums. This Dio is like a fuse to a bomb. He needs to keep his anger in check or he wouldn't get his way. There's some little sparks here and there showing his vulnerable side, like when Arena had disrespected him and when Jonathan went all out on him throwing hands, but he tried to keep it in check. Because these sparks were Dio's weaknesses, his pride being shown to be easily broken and also how he sees himself. He feels that he needs to be respected and recognized. He wants to stand on top just like he had planned from when he killed his father and left the slums. With all his pride that he has built up and the reputation he makes from trying to destroy Jonathan's life, he shows himself as charming and manipulative, someone who always has a plan and is confident in his own abilities of completing his goals. But shockingly, on top of all of that, Dio is one insecure guy. He was scared by the fact that Jonathan was able to push him to start using a knife, and also comes to later on be cautious of how to use his new skills to take on the Joestar family in part 3. He subjects to the fear of losing to the Joestars in part 3, and you basically see how as he hides in the shadows for most of the part, only coming out in the end. He only likes to do things once he's sure as possible that he's going to win. He knows throughout most of part 3 that he is not up to strength and could lose, showing he has fear. He's actually afraid of someone, whether he'd like to admit it or not. He can be both afraid of his opponents and also afraid of how he uses his own skills against them. This trait of his is basically another way of showing us that he isn't entirely an evil blood-sucking vampire, but a human who uses the power of the stone mask to gain an upper hand in his fight against his enemies. He's afraid and still has that human quality with him, which is another thing I want to talk about. He says he rejects his humanity, but what he truly rejects is his poor skills as a human being. He probably believed that his current human state that he couldn't possibly achieve something even greater than just money. So he rejects that part of himself, not becoming a vampire, but becoming more so an improved version of himself. This greediness of his shows his desperation for superiority, something he had gained from the slums. This for me makes his character kind of compelling. Someone who rejects themselves to try to become something greater, yet in that greater state still has his fears and insecurity with him. He wanted to reject that but couldn't. It just isn't how it works for him, just like how it couldn't work for him to grow up in a decent place. Switching from his desperation for power, we can still see his humanity showing when he shows his respect for Jonathan in their fight. Do you think an entirely evil vampire would have respect for a human? No, of course you don't, because vampires are on a different plane from humans. Dio wasn't. If there was a bridge connecting humans to vampires, I'd say Dio was in the middle. He still had shown traits of both sides after wearing the stone mask and really didn't hide it. Now with his loss at the end of part 1, Dio became afraid. A human had the ability to beat him and make him only a head. Even within his state as a vampire, Dio was still taken down by someone like Jonathan, a human. He obviously respected Jonathan because of this, but still was frightened by it. But with this fear, he had sat for 100 years after his defeat. Within this time, he had begun thinking over and over again, and within this thought process, he had thought of something else other than becoming the ruler of the world. He had thought of the Heaven Plan, which is brought up in part 6 and is continued by Pucci. This Heaven Plan is something that no one would ever have thought for Dio to want to achieve. But when you look into it, it makes so much sense on why Dio would want to take part in this plan. Heaven for Dio is true happiness, and he wants to reach it. After 100 years, he believes that having an invincible vampiric body or even money doesn't gain true happiness. What does gain that happiness Dio is talking about is one brought by the Heaven Plan. He grew up unhappily and was abused by his father, also seeing his only loved one die over the years. Dio's one of true happiness makes sense. I think after 100 years, Dio had realized that his self back in part 1 was just rushing to stand on the top and couldn't find himself a true goal, a true motive true to himself. But now he has found one. This just makes him even more interesting, but this behavior isn't all too different from his Phantom Blood self. He still has that strong desperation with him and that will of gaining what he can't have, even this near impossible plan of heaven. If Dio says he wants something, he'll do anything to get it, but he wouldn't rush in, of course. He makes a whole plan of trying to gain true happiness, and through this plan, he even makes a genuine friend. Some of you may be wondering what exactly is the Heaven Plan, or you probably forgot it. Well, for Dio to shed light on his true happiness, time has to accelerate to the max, making a new world appear, resetting the old world. Due to these actions, humans would see all the events that would happen. Any misfortunes that would impact upon their life would be seen by them as time is being reset, and after that, they would be transported to the new world. Every accident, every illness, when their life would end, they would all experience it before arriving to the new world. With their mind and body memorizing these experiences, they'll find true resolve in their fate, and that is the happiness Dio had brought up. People who have accepted their fate they have seen will find satisfaction in Dio's eyes. Dio wanting to achieve this is just really cool and something that I totally understand him trying to do. He would now not only try to be a tyrant, but something more of a messiah, one who guides people to happiness. It's not a full switch up from his old views, but more of a change in actions. Part 6 Dio is probably the most interesting point of Dio, as we can see his mindset change after 100 years and see how he reshapes both himself and actions, as well as him meeting Pucci. That was a really nice thing Araki had done. The relationship is nowhere near Pucci just being one of Dio's minions, but his friend. It's a cool thing to add to both the story and his character, and I love how it's handled in that part. All in all, Dio is one interesting villain and a great character. Tragic backstories don't excuse actions of characters, but more so explain them. Dio's upbringing just doesn't give us an idea on why Dio is evil and annoying in Phantom Blood, but also gives us an idea on why he wants to achieve the Heaven Plan that is way more grand scale than just trying to gain the Joestar household. This video doesn't take away from you probably just enjoying Dio as that one menace that is enjoyable, but when people seriously say that as criticism for his character, it kind of shows their reading level. He's not an ultra complex villain like Johan, but I just wanted to say that he wasn't only the average villain, but something pretty much more than that. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to put some more video ideas in the comments below. This was really fun to make, so if there's any other characters that could probably need some defending, put them in the comments as well. Now, like always, subscribe if you haven't, hit the like button, turn on bell notifications, and follow my Twitter down below. It's been Endless Requiem, peace.